Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
Hey Skiba News Nation family, welcome to episode 4 of the Skiba News Nation podcast show. This upcoming episode we'll be discussing current events like why community is so important, forced cohesion, the mouse Utopia experiment, why gas prices are so crazy, SADS, and the dangers of AI. And for history we'll be talking about the 1966 school shooting that happened at the University of Texas at the Clock Tower. We have an eyewitness that has never been interviewed, a Skiba News Nation exclusive, so stay tuned. Anyways, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Jake Grant. How you doing, Jake?
Hey, what's up, Jeremiah? Doing great, man.
Good to hear, man. So what have you been up to?
Well, this previous weekend, my family and I went to a music festival and got to hang out with a bunch of friends, and it actually gave me a little bit of the topics I'd like to talk about today. I'm really excited. It was a great time.
Awesome, man. Yeah, okay. Well, let's dive right in.
Today's news. Just to kind of give a little bit of a forecast, today before we get into the news, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of community. Like I said, my family and I recently went to this music festival up in Iowa. It was a great experience, and it really made me want to talk about how important community is, especially as the world is being divided. Because in the end, those who survive are going to be those who are united under truth. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in the cities, how there's a thing called forced cohesion, where the government, the powers that be, want people to be this smeltering pot in the cities, and how that is in contrast to healthy community. And we're going to look at a little video about the mouse Utopia experiment, which is a great explanation of why the cities are degrading in the different political and moral systems that are emerging from these concentrations of mankind, and how some rat experiments with these rodents is able to forecast what is actually going on in the cities today. We're going to talk a little bit about gas prices. They're going absolutely crazy today. Oh, man. And some other news, we're going to talk a little bit about sudden adult death syndrome, which is something that's currently being pushed by the media. And the big question is, what's causing adults to die suddenly? Well, could it possibly be a little medical procedure that a lot of people went through last year? Very possibly. We're going to also then get into the bigger segment for today's current news, which is artificial intelligence, and do a lot of discussion regarding AI and how guys like Elon Musk are all about technology, and they've even warned people about where AI is going. But we're also going to talk about how it could affect our lives. And then we're going to finish off the news segment with a little interesting metaphor video that I recently saw on an interview with Jim Brewer and Owen Benjamin, and it's regarding population control and global governance in relation to a great analogy, which was milking animals for milk, right? Goat milk or cow milk or whatever. And it's just going to be a great show today, man. And I know you have an awesome segment today as well that I'm really excited about, our history segment. And so I'm really excited to talk about that and some of the topics around that as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to show you. I want it to be kind of a surprise, but we'll get into that after the current news. So take it away.
All right. Well, I wanted to start off today, like I said, just to show like this quick video of this event that we went to. It was this big music festival in Iowa, and it was a lot of people coming together, singing, dancing, all kinds of music. I got to meet up with a bunch of my buddies that live in Iowa. We were up on a hill blowing shofars and at the sunset, and got to eat food and sit around the campfires together. And I wanted to just share, some of this awesome event, because it really does remind me how important community is. And after showing this video, I wanted to share with you guys a interesting post that I saw on Facebook, just browsing, and it's a great reminder of the way that political differences and things in the world today are really dividing people. And this is what the post said: a disagreement or different political view can cost you a friend in this hostile age of intolerance. You can be forced to evaluate how deep your friendships really are. You might discover the sad reality that you're walking in shallow water. True relationships stand the test of time, regardless of a different point of view. Whether it's change in social status or job or even the church you attend, true friendship is not just functional, but it establishes a steadfast system of love and support. And it's love at all times, right? Not love just when somebody agrees with you. And invest in and deepen real relationships that don't end. And when a shift in the wind comes, like these things that are happening in the world today, like we're going to talk about in our current news segment, then this is greatly reflected in Proverb 18:24. A man with many friends can still be ruined, but a true friend sticks closer than a brother. And I wanted to talk about that just briefly, because as the world starts to go into these turbulent times, the taste is on the wind. We see the signs. We see how the media is going bonkers. We see how people are going bonkers. And there's this great reminder we have in the scripture in Hebrews 10:24-27. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing nigh. That's why it is so important for us to have community, because when we're with people to work together on projects, kind of like what me and you are doing, Jeremiah, we're working together for a greater good, for a greater cause, to spread truth in the world. And how important is that, man? Just, we can't be islands to ourselves anymore, because everything's being thrown against us, all these deceptions, and on the chance that I'm not hearing the voice of God in a particular topic or situation, hopefully guys like you or whoever can speak into my life and give me that watchman warning, or help encourage me in areas that I'm falling short in, or if I'm feeling like lonely or depressed. Having a strong community is so important. And that goes into what I was wanting to talk about, and we're going to look at this really interesting experiment that is the difference between forced cohesion, which is what is happening in the cities today, where they are forcing people of all different tribes and ethnicities and cultures to have to live in close proximity. And what that results in is a culture of political correctness, where nobody can offend anybody else. And what it does is it steals people's identities, it steals people's cultures and their heritage, and it forces them into this amalgamation of just all these different government-based pursuits and government-based culture, which we have been talking about in previous episodes, are very poisonous, anti-biblical, anti-family, anti-you, right? And that's what they want, everybody united under these flags of ideology that are contrary to human nature itself, and to the Word of God as well, even more importantly. But man, this is going to be so interesting. I'm really excited to share with you this video. I was turned on to it by BB, right? One of the guys I've been shouting out.
I'm excited to see it.
The Mouse Utopia experiment, and it explains what is happening today in our cities, and it's in relation to this mouse experiment that shows when mice are kept in a very dense population, they start acting out the very things we are seeing.
Wow.
Foaming the mouth of the liberal inner cities. So let's just watch this Mouse Utopia experiment.
The work of Dr. John Calhoun at the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C. has attempted to answer this question. In a unique experiment that took years to complete, Dr. Calhoun used white mice to study population growth and its effects on individual behavior. In addition to his renowned research papers, he has recorded some of these observations on film. In this 16-cell mouse habitat, utopian conditions of nutrition, comfort, and housing were provided for a potential population of over 3,000 mice. Yet, in spite of ideal conditions, the mouse population met with catastrophe. Individuals were kept track of by color markings on their fur. Factors which normally control population growth, such as predation by owls or cats, were eliminated. Transmissible disease was also reduced. In effect, the mouse universe simulated the present situation of a continually expanding population of humans. To see how Dr. Calhoun's mouse universe grew, we'll use the familiar population graph again. Within the first 100 days, the mice went through the period Dr. Calhoun called strive. This was a period of adjustment. Territories were established, and nests were made. The next period lasted about 250 days. The population of the mice doubled every 60 days. This was called the exploit period. The use of resources became unequal. Although each living unit was identical in structure and opportunities, more food and water was consumed in some areas. As the population increased, most mice associated eating and drinking with the presence of others, and crowding developed in certain units. The third period, consisting of 300 days, found the population of mice leveling off. This was called the equilibrium period. Dr. Calhoun noticed that the newer generations of young were inhibited, since most space was already socially defined. At this time, some unusual behavior became noticeable. Violence became prevalent. Excess males strived for acceptance, were rejected, and withdrew. Huddling together, they would exhibit brief flurries of violence among themselves. The effects of violence became increasingly visible. Certain individuals became targets of repeated attack. These individuals would have badly chewed and scarred tails. Other young mice growing into adulthood exhibited an even different type of behavior. Dr. Calhoun called these individuals the beautiful ones. Their time was devoted solely to grooming, eating, and sleeping. They never involved themselves with others, engaged in sex, nor would they fight. All appeared as a beautiful exhibit of the species, with keen, alert eyes and a healthy, well-kept body. These mice, however, could not cope with unusual stimuli. Though they looked inquisitive, they were, in fact, very stupid. Dr. Calhoun called the last period the die phase, leading the population into extinction. Although the mouse Utopia could house 3,000, the population began to decline at 2,200. In the shift from the equilibrium to the die phase, each animal became less aware of associates, despite all animals being pushed closer together. Dr. Calhoun concluded that the mice could not effectively deal with the repeated contact of so many individuals. The evidence of violence increased to the point where most individuals had had their tails bitten to some degree. Eventually, the entire mouse population perished. Dr. Calhoun's experiment is a classic example of a typical population and its growth when left unchecked. Research in this area continues under his supervision. Currently, Dr. James Hill has taken the basics of the Calhoun experiment to study social behavior even more closely. In his experiment, rats are used instead of mice. Healthy individuals are selected to start the population. The rats are anesthetized so that Dr. Hill can perform a minor operation necessary to the success of his experiments. A small electromagnetic encapsulated device is implanted into every rat. This small unit enables sensing devices to keep track of the movement and position of each individual in the population. After surgery, the rats are introduced to their new, multi-leveled home, all at the same time. The rats immediately begin to explore their new environment, prior to organizing territories and nesting. Dr. Hill will trace how individuals move about in crowded situations. This movement is followed by tubular sensing devices. Every time a rat enters or passes through a tube, the unit detects and registers its presence. This constant movement is monitored by computer. Nesting activity is also studied. Dr. Hill has observed that the larger the population, the less care a mother gives to her nest and young. The same type of individuals that resulted in the mouse utopia are also emerging in the rat population. There are aggressives, asocial, and outcasts. Though these studies use animals, the findings about population growth and individual behavior are being closely compared to our own human population. Like all populations that have existed on this planet, many researchers believe that the human race has reached a crucial point in the exploit phase, a point where important decisions must be made and careful planning implemented if we are to survive. The study of plant and animal populations helps us to make decisions about the future of our human population, so that we may maintain our own balance with nature.
Wow.
What are your thoughts?
Oh my God, I think there's so many parallels in what we just saw and today. Like, when was that made?
That was made years ago, I think 1950s. John Calhoun's mouse utopia experiment, and oh man, just to give you a few bullet points of the whole thing, the concentrated amount of mice, right, caused several interesting things. It caused aggression in the population. It caused them to stop breeding, which is very interesting. It's almost like they recognized that in a concentrated area, there was no hope for their offspring to be able to spread out, and so they stopped having babies, right? Mm-hmm. We also have the aggression of female mice. When you look into the experiment, the female mice began to kill and eat their young, which is tied to the modern abortion thing that's being pushed mostly in major cities. We also have the interesting kind of the beautiful mice is what they called them, and the increase of mouse vanity, so to speak, which is something that we kind of see even in the cities of people that are just beautiful people, but they don't do anything. They're just kind of dumbed down.
They're just there.
Beautiful. Exactly. Just kind of asexual humans, which is tied in also to the transgenderism topic. There's so many parallels with this mouse utopia experiment, and what we're seeing through forced cohesion in the cities of large groups of people being crammed all into this like beehive system in the cities.
Yeah, it's almost like they're demonizing each other. Like they're doing what we're doing now, like what people are doing now. Almost like they're segregating each other based on what exactly? They're different groups?
Yeah, they're being aggressive. Like certain mice were more aggressive or being attacked more than other groups of mice. But it ties into even some of the things we've been talking about, and we'll talk about in today's episode, which is the mice literally were losing their minds and becoming more aggressive towards other mice, which is tied to perhaps Ultra, the increase of violent shootings and things like that. It's just very interesting that experiments like these could be used to forecast what will happen in these big city environments, which is really what the liberal kind of community wants to push people towards. Less people out in the suburbs, less people out in the country, more people in the system, in the cities.
More people to control. They want to be able to control us. We just got to stand up and say, no, you can't control me.
Yep.
That's very interesting.
And that goes into our next brief discussion is they really want to curb mankind's population, because while the powers that be, so to speak, want people living in cities because we're easier to control in the cities, they also recognize that the more people there are, the harder they are to control. And I wanted to show this. We have the World Economic Forum talking about how they're trying to do carbon footprint reduction. Well, guess what? You are the carbon they want to reduce. Man. They talk about how each and every person is a carbon footprint. This is a great reminder of something we've shared in previous episodes, which is, guess what? According to the Georgia Guidestones, they want to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature.
My dad wanted to expose that right up until, what happened to him. and he was very big into the Georgia Guidestones. And you said that you were there with him when he went at one point.
Yes, we were able to visit the Guidestones. We were at a conference at the time and went out on a little tour group to check out these anomalies that just appeared back in I think it was the 90s that these Guidestones were made. Nobody knows who funded it, but definitely a lot of money went into it to preserve it. They even have cameras all around it because people who disagree with this premise would go and vandalize it. You know, your dad was onto something, Jeremiah. He was looking into how they wanted to reduce mankind's population. But at the same time, isn't it interesting how they want to reduce mankind's population, but they also want to funnel us all into the city system because of control mechanisms?
That is interesting.
So this goes back along with the topic that I wanted to talk about, which was this importance of community versus forced cohesion, right? And it reminds me of this interesting parable in the scriptures. It talks about the difference between the wheat and the tares and the separation. It says, another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seeds in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went away. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, the tares who had also appeared. So the servants and the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? And he said to them, an enemy has done this. And the servants said to him, do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, no, lest you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat that is with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the first time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And you could make the comparison here that the gathering of people, the groups that are forming together based on various topics are this sign of the harvest that is coming, because all of these deceptions are forcing people to group themselves into bundles, right? You know,
their identity.
The tares are exactly their identity.
Yeah, it's turning people into their identity, like changing your own individual thought and putting you in one bubble and just one thing. You're all divided at that point.
Exactly. It's the gathering of people into these groups. It's the different divisions of topics. So we have here a very good warning of what will keep you from being bundled together with the tares, so to speak, and it is a love of the truth. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-10 says, the coming of the lawless one is by activity of Satan with all power and false signs and wonders. You know, false news, fake news,
very fake news.
And with
true.
all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. And that's why community is so important, because I really do truly feel that our reckoning as people when the world collapses around us is based on the community we find ourselves bundled with. If you're bundling together with somebody whose whole agenda is to push Pride Month, or somebody whose whole agenda is the
take away your
BLM
guns,
movement,
take away your guns,
or exactly whose whole agenda is to be disarmed, then you're going to find that the reckoning of when the world falls apart and the situations you find yourselves in will be based on those people you have surrounded yourselves with. So do you want to be surrounded with people who have a love for the truth, a love for family, a biblical basis for morality? Or do you want to be surrounded with people that are probably going to be eating themselves alive when the time comes of complete societal breakdown? Can you trust your neighbor? Can you trust your friends? If your friends are people that don't mind going and robbing somebody blind, how do you know when the going gets tough that they're not going to turn on you? That's an extreme example, but it's just a reminder of why those we surround ourselves with are so important, especially as the world gets crazy.
Well, what's that old saying? You are what you hang around.
Bad company corrupts good morals, right? And
right.
It's so important for us to recognize that All of these agendas are meant to segment the population for control purposes, but also for culling the herd, who is less easy to get a hold of, right? The population that is not beholden to the system, they're not going to be taking the poisons. They're not going to be putting things in their body that they know they shouldn't, right?
Yep.
But those who trust the system and those who are living with those who push a trust of the system are going to be falling prey to all of these deceptions, which is why I shared those verses. But yeah, any thoughts on that topic before we move on to crazy gas prices?
Well, I mean, I think it sounds like the people that you're talking about are worshiping the government or worshiping the scientists, quote unquote. You know what I mean? It's kind of sickening that they don't listen to God and they just do whatever the government tells you to do. It just blows my mind. Why can't you make up your own mind? And that's not acceptable today.
Yeah, I recently saw an interview that talked about the difference between agnostics, theists, and anti-theists, right? And a lot of people who don't believe in a god, they believe in the evolutionary model, which, by the way, is not provable. There are micro evolutions within kinds and species through adaptation, but macro evolution as a whole is a completely unproven theory. But people jump on theories like that and they use it to say that we live a meaningless existence. We are literally just the most intelligent goop of soup, right, that has emerged from the primordial dump. And it's a attack on any basis or system of morality that would come from having a theistic position, which is a belief in God. Because the truth is there's no such thing as a complete agnostic, because agnostics suppose that they don't really care either way. They're just looking for answers in the life that they have. But throughout life, we constantly have the truth that there is a divine creator, that there is a plan. There's all these synchronicities in creation that show us the glory of the Most High, right? And so the truth is that there are two camps. There are anti-theists, people that hate the idea that there's a creator, and people that are theists, people that recognize that there is a creator and are doing their best to learn who this creator is and what he wants for us. And a lot of the agendas that are being pushed today are coming from the camp of the anti-theists, the ones who want to say there is no such thing as morality. Everything is subjective. Everything is based on your own opinion of reality and what makes you happy, which delves us as a society into a hedonistic culture, which is all pleasure-based. And of course, that's what we're seeing, at least in this month, Pride Month, which pushes a hedonistic, pleasure-based lifestyle, which, if you look at the evolutionary model, doesn't really make sense if traits are passed down, according to the theory, are passed down by the strongest generation, right? And these traits are then passed to the next generation. How is it that the population of the LGBTQ movement is increasing in number? Well, my argument would be it's because of indoctrination and grooming of the younger generation. And yet all of these people oftentimes line up with and buy the theory of evolution and the anti-theist perspective because it justifies what is being promoted. And the code of nature, the laws of God, lead people to life and to being fruitful and multiplying. And you can't get that in that certain populace. So how is it that it's passed to each generation if they are buying the evolutionary model, right? How does a population that can't procreate pass those genes down? And how is it that population is growing exponentially in today's world? Well, it's because of indoctrination through our media and our TV. But just to not get carried away with that, let's move on to our topic of crazy gas prices, man. I don't know. What are you experiencing down there in Texas, getting back and forth from the office in regards to gas?
It took me, I think it cost like $70 to fill up my whole tank in my truck, and it used to only cost $30 when Trump was in office. So it's just so crazy the amount of inflation and how high the gas is getting. I see people all the time, they struggle and they put like $5 in their car because that's all they can afford. And it's very sad. And, you know, I'm blessed that I'm able to fill up my tank. And I know that there are a lot of people that are struggling, and that hurts, you know, my soul. Like it hurts to watch them struggle. And yeah, that's what I got to say about it. I don't like it. I don't like the gas price thing. It's way too crazy for me. And I hope it gets better soon.
We know one of the agendas of the World Economic Forum and all of these worldwide kind of global policies regarding climate change are they want to move everyone to electric vehicles. And I just recently saw many articles and even advertisements from big car companies
as if we can afford them. They want us to do it, but we can't afford them. And we can't just, like, I have a 2021 Toyota Tacoma. I can't just throw it away, you know, and buy a brand new $70,000 electric car. It's crazy.
And a big aspect of it is the electric car push will be calling people into the inner cities where they can actually get that charge. So not only are the big car manufacturers moving towards electric, the electric car system is going to be moving people into the inner cities so that they can even function with their new electric car, because you're not going to find a Tesla charging stand in Timbuktu. And I know there is a push to get charging stations put all over the place, but we know that they are available mostly in the cities, which draws people into the system that is more easily controlled. And gas vehicles and diesel vehicles can run outside of the system. People, even with diesel vehicles, can convert to be able to use alternative fuels. People can make their own gasoline and versions of that, like biofuels. But whenever you phase out any kind of combustible engine for an electric engine, you have to be plugged into the electric system, right? So I want to share this funny picture with you. Domestic oil is the new ivermectin. Because you can't have it, because it would resolve the crisis we need you to go through. How true, man. It's just crazy that just a few years ago, under the Trump administration, the Keystone XL pipeline was being pushed through completion, but Biden shut it down. But it would have been delivering 830,000 barrels each day, which would have kept that cost of gasoline way down compared to what it is now.
Yeah, it's gotten out of hand.
Here's a picture of Salt Bay, you know, sprinkling his salt. Well, it says drivers putting $50 in their car today. $50 gets you one little drop of gas.
Pretty much.
So, oh man, it's just crazy. And it's all the more evidence that they don't want people traveling, which would infringe upon the need to be gathering together, going and in
the community,
person, meeting with. Exactly.
Full circle.
It's full circle with that topic is they want you to stay home so that all you're consuming is media. All you're consuming is things they want you to believe and ingest, and you're not able to go and share truths, share resources, do bartering, do this or that with a community that you're able to meet with in person. Some of the unfortunate results of them pushing this anti-gasoline agenda and pushing prices through the roof. In some other news, there's this interesting article that came out in December 2021, and I know I showed that meme that talked about how domestic oil is the new ivermectin. But in relation to that, we have here a December 2021 article talked about many athletes lapsing and dying, likely due to side effects from the hokey pokey.
Yeah,
right?
hokey pokey.
And this is significant because this year, a year after all the push of the initial protocols and the boosters, we have this topic of sudden adult death syndrome. And I wanted to show this meme is how, what if sudden infant death syndrome is caused by the same thing that's causing sudden adult death syndrome? They're caused by the same thing, which is toxic chemicals being squirted into your arm, right?
And being forced
And,
upon people.
being coerced through loss of jobs or convinced through you get an extra donut at Dunkin' Donuts if you come in with proof. And yet all this year we have just the terrible news of many people dying of what's being called SADS, sudden adult death syndrome. And it's a medical term that is covering up the fact that a lot of these people that are randomly dying took many of these protocols that were pushed on the population in 2021 and in 2022, of course. And what's very alarming is that it's now been approved for infants down to 6 months. And so just the population that is being affected by the largest experiment that has ever been conducted on mankind is just crazy, man.
Well, in the athlete thing, like a lot of athletes were forced to do it or they wouldn't be able to play or whatever, you know? So it's just kind of unfair for them because now their lives are at risk.
And of course there's heroes like Kyrie Irving, right? Who, regardless of the push to be hokey pokeyed, stood up and took massive fines throughout that period of his career so that he didn't have to inject himself with what I understand that he recognized as a very dangerous mRNA experiment. And so heroes like that, you need to be called out for standing up and not participating despite the fact that they were in the public eye and that they were suffering financial loss. He wasn't even allowed to play at home games.
And he was demonized and all that stuff by the mainstream media. It's just crazy.
Human brain is a very sophisticated organ. It works day and night from the moment you are born until you turn on the news. Oh man, isn't this true? People are following the narratives, and right now the narratives are pushing things that are really detrimental to ourself and our health and our safety as Westerners and as mankind. You know, it brings to mind the frog in the boiling pot metaphor, is that oftentimes people don't recognize that the temperature is slowly being turned up. And if you were to play some of the news segments that we have going on today, back in 2018, 2019, people would freak out. They'd be like, no way I'm going along with that. But because the temperature is being turned up slowly and slowly, the population is getting used to these extreme pushes of agendas. Oh, man.
Some scary stuff.
As we continue on to the main current event topic, I wanted to talk about AI today, Jeremiah. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence?
Well, I know Elon Musk talked about it as if we should be scared of it, that it could soon control us and almost take over the world. That's what I was told, or I watched it on Joe Rogan or something where he was talking about AI is the number one threat to all humans. So he was trying to warn people about it.
Yeah, we're going to be able to see some of those clips you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
It's just really interesting. Just recently, there's been a deep fake version of Simon Cowell singing on stage from the recent America's Got Talent episodes that pretty much showed that they can put somebody's real-time face on another person's body and it can look absolutely real. And I just wanted to show this briefly because it's tied with some interesting discredit of information that might come out in coming years. If AI can fake somebody's persona, fake somebody's face, then any media can be called into question. And especially when we have topics like the Ghislaine Maxwell case with people committing atrocities against children and people being sold into sex slavery and politicians having incriminating blackmail held against them to keep their positions of power under control of the powers that be, so to speak, then could the deep fake topic and what AI is able to do with changing people's personas or imitating people be used for nefarious agendas in the coming future? So let me just share this brief clip from America's Got Talent and the deep fake scene of Simon Cowell singing. Just very interesting.
All right.
Welcome. All right, so
That
just
is
look at that, man.
scary.
So convincingly real looking is to me what is the biggest aspect of this that I wanted to point out is the deepfake topic had come out several years ago, and people were deep faking kind of icky political pictures. I know there was a deep fake on Bill Clinton supposedly sitting in a room with a prostitute. I know there was deep fakes of Trump. There were deep fakes of all these different people.
Well, it's scary how they can do that to us if they wanted to. So they could make us do crazy things and totally without our knowledge or consent. My body, my choice. Don't use my body. Don't use my face. So I don't know. That's just so weird. And you can do it with the power of your iPhone. You can get an app and literally do it. That's the crazy part. That it's at our fingertips.
And that's how AI is developing its technology to be able to do these things, these deepfake actions, to mimic mankind, to steal your identity and be able to make you say and do whatever it wants, right?
Right.
And this is interesting because could AI be tied to a so-called deception that is going to use this artificial intelligence to convince people to do atrocities? Like, what if somebody who's mentally unstable, who's on a bunch of pharmaceutical drugs, has AI under the control of, some nefarious organizations convincing them to go about and do atrocities? Could AI be convincing people to think in crazy ways? Could AI be used for all kinds of just terrible things because it knows how to imitate real life?
My opinion is absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see why it couldn't.
And AI is been in recent news in quite a lot of recent coverage, as just recently I'm going to share this video of a Google engineer claiming that chatbot is now sentient. And we're going to watch this news broadcast from NBC News that talks about AI and how it's now in the public eye.
Okay.
Chatbot and one of its engineers.
Yeah, let's lay this out. Engineer Blake Lemoine says a chatbot project he was working on called Lambda can express thoughts and feelings equivalent to that of a child. And now he wants the company to get consent from the computer program before running experiments on it. Google placed Lemoine on leave for violating its confidentiality policy after he published transcripts of conversations between himself and the chatbot.
The company also released a statement saying, quote, "Our team, including ethicists and technologists, has reviewed Blake's concerns and per our AI principles and have informed him that the evidence does not support his claims." He was told that there was no evidence that Lambda was sentient and lots of evidence against it.
Let's bring in Natasha Tiku, tech culture reporter for the Washington Post. Natasha, okay, this one is admittedly a little over my head. I can't even understand the engineer's complaints that a chatbot could need consent in the way that you would ask a child before running an experiment on it. So walk us through this. How does this work? And does the AI community believe these technologies are really capable of reaching that?
Yes. Yes, these are extremely important questions. I'm so glad you're asking them. I should say that every expert that I interviewed for the story, and as you said, Google itself, it adamantly says that it's actually a chatbot generator, is not sentient, and that Blake is misunderstanding the way that the technology works. These are called, the way the deep learning and large language models works is you feed in a massive corpus of data from the internet. So it's really just pattern recognition. It understands, by looking at all of this data, which word might come next in a sequence, which word might come next in a sentence. And if you feed it on Wikipedia and Reddit and, other internet dialogue, it understands, it quote unquote, learns how to put sentences together that sound like they have meaning. But all of the experts say that he is mistaken and not understanding the technology properly. However,
All right, so that's all I wanted to show with that brief news breakdown of a Google engineer claiming that the chatbot is becoming sentient. And while they're trying to brush it off as, oh, he just misunderstands the technology. Oh, this is not as alarming as it, some people are getting.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they explain how it works, which is all about pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, Jeremiah, have you ever been on like Facebook or wherever, and it has ads that pop up that are targeted to you in almost a supernatural way?
Yeah, where I'll be like, me and my girlfriend will be talking about something so specific, and it's like later on, we've even tried it where we said like purple elephant, purple elephant as a tongue twister. Anyways, and then we've been looking on our phones and, hey, there's a purple elephant. Crazy. It's like they're listening to us, or they're somehow inside of our mind. And it really weirded me out the first time it happened. But we've tried these little experiments, and it's scary what we've come up with. We should record one time and show it for the audience here. But that's creepy.
Oh, yeah. And that's how AI, in its far extent, will likely start to operate in our lives, is while we might not recognize that it's a sentient, computer, what it is going to be doing is applying more and more pattern recognition in each and every individual's life as it becomes more interconnected with the system that we're plugged into, whether it's our social media, whether it's this or that. That's what AI is being pushed towards being able to fill the role of, which is kind of like a replacement voice of God or Holy Spirit, if you want. Like, instead of the Holy Spirit telling you what you should be doing by following the desires of God as outlined in the Bible, instead you're going to follow the voice of Siri whenever you say, what should I do with my life today, right?
Yeah, I turned Siri off, but she somehow always turns back on, and it's so creepy. It'll be when I'm talking about like China or something weird that she'll catch me, and my watch will catch me saying something that I shouldn't be talking about. And so I'm just very careful, and I put my watch in the other room if I'm ever gonna have a conversation, or we're gonna be talking about certain things,
Yeah, I mean, it's just so strange that they have the amount of technology just to even do what they're doing today. And of course, we're about to watch this video, as you mentioned, some dire warnings from tech geniuses, so to speak, that have warned what AI could become. So let's check this out.
All right.
Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. Like ideas. The decision I see with AI experts is that they don't want to make it. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. This tends to plague smart people. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine can be way smarter than them, so they discount the idea, which is fundamental. It's the wishful thinking in this situation. I'm really very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows. And the rate of improvement is, it feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. And then we're building progressively greater intelligence, and the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence. It's going to come faster than anyone appreciates. I think it's, with each passing year, the sophistication of computer intelligence is growing dramatically. I mean, I really think we're on an exponential improvement path of artificial intelligence. And the number of smart humans that are developing AI is also increasing dramatically. When you look at like the attendance at the AI conferences, they're doubling every year. They're getting full. I have a sort of a young cousin of mine who's graduating from Berkeley in computer science and physics, and I asked him, well, how many of the smart students are studying AI in computer science? And the answer is all of them. With a better approach or better outcome is that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or a small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad, like some evil dictator country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control. It just becomes a very unstable situation, I think, if you've got any incredibly powerful AI. You just don't know who's going to control that. So it's not as I think that the risk is that the AI would develop all of its own right off the bat. I think it's concerned that someone may use it in a way that is bad. And even if they weren't going to use it in a way that's bad, somebody could take from them and use it in a way that's bad.
So before we continue on, guess what? The bad guys, literally our own government, who are pushing all of these agendas that we talked about briefly that are contrary to scripture, contrary to family, contrary to safety and the well-being of your health and body, they're the ones who have their fingers intertwined with this modern AI agenda. And Elon Musk is warning us, what if a bad actor gets a hold of it? What if somebody with nefarious intent? Guess what? They already have a bad agenda that they're wanting to play out through their use of this technology.
Yep. Everybody has it at their fingertips now, so there's something they can do about it.
All right, let's watch a little bit more of this video, and then we'll move on to another interesting video regarding AI and their control of financial assets. But let's keep seeing what Elon Musk is warning the world about regarding AI.
All right.
All of us already are cyborgs. So you have a machine extension of yourself in the form of your phone and your computer and all your applications. You are already superhuman. But by far, you have more power, more capability than the President of the United States had 30 years ago. If you have an internet link, you have the Oracle of Wisdom, you can communicate to millions of people, you can communicate to the rest of Earth instantly. And these are magical powers that didn't exist not that long ago. So everyone is already superhuman. I think the singularity is probably the right word, because we just don't know what's going to happen once there's intelligence substantially greater than that of a human brain. I mean, most of the movies and TV featuring AI, they don't describe it quite the way it's likely to actually take place. But I think you just have to consider, like, even in the benign scenario where AI is much smarter than a person, what do we do? Yeah. What job do we have? I have to say that when something is a danger to the public, then there needs to be some government agency, regulators. But the fact is, like, we've got regulators in aircraft industry, car industry, drugs, food, anything that's sort of a public risk. And I think this has to fall into the category of a public risk. Usually there'll be some new technology will cause damage or death. There will be an outcry. There will be investigation. Years will pass. There will be some sort of insight committee. There will be rulemaking. Then there will be oversight, eventually regulations. This all takes many years. This is the normal course of things. If you look at, say, automotive regulations, how long did it take for seatbelts to be implemented, to be required? The auto industry fought seatbelts, I think, for more than a decade. Before any regulations on seatbelts, it was extremely obvious. If you had seatbelts on, you would be far less likely to die or be seriously injured. It's unequivocal. And the industry fought this for years successfully. Eventually, after many people died, regulators insisted on seatbelts. This time frame is not relevant to AI. You can't take 10 years from the point at which it's dangerous. It's too late. I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And so therefore, there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear war. It's by a lot.
All right, so that's all I wanted to share for that particular video. Any initial thoughts, Jeremiah?
I'm just kind of speechless. I mean, he has so much information on it, and he did try to warn everybody. And I think they were trying to sell it to America as, look at this cool, fun thing that we can do with this artificial intelligence, and then now they're doing other stuff with it that is not okay. And that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I recently saw in a funny podcast, somebody was asking the question, I wonder when they're going to roll out that chip. The chip in the hand or the chip in the forehead. I hear pastors and conspiracy theorists talk about this mark of the beast or whatever. Let me just check. Let me just check if I'm going to be chipped soon. And that's something interesting that Elon pointed out is we already are so interconnected with the Internet of Things, with the Internet of Information, with the Internet of social interaction and people. It's literally at pretty much everyone's fingertips, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and the influence that this information that we are able to access can have on our life is profound. And that's why AI, in a way, is very dangerous, because it's kind of like the black mirror that spits out whatever we feed into it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of garbage that people are feeding into this technology. And so you kind of wonder why Skynet in the Terminator movies wants to off mankind, right? Well, it's because it recognizes mankind is a danger and a evil to itself. And so it thinks
Mhm.
it's almost like an act of mercy to take mankind out, right?
Yeah.
Well, in a way, we all have access to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in our fingertips, right? If we weren't able to access information such as, you know, the different perspectives of conspiracy theories, whether it's the bountiful access to books and even Bible, you know, apps and information that is good, then a lot of people wouldn't be as awake as they are today. But it also, at our fingertips, is the whole realm of the world of wickedness is literally right there for us to access at any time. And so the operation and the use of free will in relation to AI is very interesting, because AI, what it will become, is a reflection of probably the darker aspects of mankind, that it then reveals to us the true desires of our heart. But the desires of mankind's heart are not the desires of the Most High. And that's why I wanted to kind of talk about the relation of AI and the replacement of what we would want as mankind is the Spirit of God in our life, the Spirit of truth in our life. Instead, whenever we have the little Siri telling us what to do, what to believe, what to think, it becomes that really nefarious replacement of our own creativity, our own divine spark, our connection to God, that we are all created for a purpose greater than just a meaningless hedonistic experience. But with the use of AI, it can kind of spit out information based on your patterns, is
Yep.
what we watched in the previous
Yep.
video. And if your patterns are patterns of self-destruction, or patterns of sin, or patterns of addiction to a TV show, or addictions to just a meaningless universe of man-made things, then we're being driven away and torn away from our true purpose.
Well, do you think that's
Which
why
according to
that's why
Elijah,
Amazon skyrocketed? Because it's at people's fingertips. They get a notification, "Hey, do you still want to buy this thing? Hey, do you still want to buy this thing?" And so many people are buying and buying and buying, and it is an addiction for some people. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a great point to bring up, is Amazon and all of these online activities skyrocketed in profitability when a lot of people were forced to stay home. And
yeah, I worked there during the pandemic, and it's like that was essential. That was essential, and that just blew my mind. People buying stuff is more essential than any other job. Didn't make sense. But yeah, I think it all started with AI, with their little very bad operation they got going on there. Their slave labor. It's crazy.
yeah, I mean, it's all leading to an agenda of a world that is fully influenced and controlled based on algorithms. Because if they know your patterns, then the big corporations that want to make money from you, want to suck resources from you and your family, are going to know the most efficient possible methods to apply to you as an individual. And when each and every one of us are hand tailored to what we consume, then in a way, mass mind control becomes all the more of a reality. And it's only possible through the number crunching supercomputers of modern AI. So to share just a little bit of a brief video regarding AI's relation to modern monetary system,
Mhm.
A fascinating video I had shared with me recently that I wanted to share, and in its relation to a BlackRock software called Aladdin, which is an AI software that buys and sells stocks and different things of monetary value, and
Okay.
how its influence on the financial system is immense. So let's check this out.
All right.
Biggest company in the world. This is the story of a robot called Aladdin. It's Wall Street's best kept secret, and it's gobbling up every asset class across every industry. Aladdin now controls $21 trillion of our global economy. To put that in perspective, that's more than the $20 trillion GDP of the US, or the $15 trillion GDP of the entire European Union. The New Statesman wrote, the total physical cash of all 7 billion people and every company, bank vault, wallet, and piggy bank in the world is around $5 trillion. Aladdin has grown into a system responsible for more than 4 times the value of all the money in the world. This one robot directs the actions of the US Federal Reserve, almost every major bank and investment fund on Wall Street, and over 17,000 traders. It controls half of all ETFs, 17% of the bond market, 10% of the global stock market, and carries out 250,000 trades every day and billions of forecasts every week. Year after year, it hoovers up trillions of data points on every market, every company, every asset, and now even each of us, what we buy, sell, and say, so that it knows what to buy and what to sell far better than any human being. Every major bank, company, and investment fund has come to rely on Aladdin and its all-powerful AI and algorithms to beat the market. And if they didn't, they'd collapse and failed in Aladdin's wake. And you know what the craziest part of this story is? This robot is just getting started. So where did Aladdin come from, and how did it get so powerful? Aladdin is the brainchild of Larry Fink, the founder of BlackRock, and his total dominance has made his company the biggest shadow bank in the world and the most powerful company on earth. The story you're about to hear is equally unbelievable and terrifying. In fact, you would think it was science fiction if it wasn't very real and happening today. This story starts in the 1980s when Larry Fink was making millions pioneering mortgage-backed securities at Wall Street Bank First Boston. That's right, the same mortgage-backed securities that caused the 2008 global financial crisis 20 years later. But back in the 80s, he was in an epic Wall Street rivalry with Louis Ranieri at Salomon Brothers, made famous as the big swinging dick in Michael Lewis's book Lies Poker. Back then, Larry was making millions for the bank and was on track to be First Boston's CEO. And then in 1986, an error in the back-office computer models led to Larry making the wrong trades, and he lost the company $100 million. The result was Larry leaving the bank as a failure with a stupid computer to blame. With that experience, Larry had just one ambition: to build a super smart robot that could pick out risk and opportunity in the market and do it better than any computer or human could do. In 1988, he launched a new startup, BlackRock, with a tiny coding team to give birth to this robot. Its name, Aladdin, which stands for Asset, Liability, and Debt Derivative Investment Network. In its first 10 years, Aladdin was fed information about every asset, price movement, and risk variable in the global bond market, Larry's specialty. And in 1999, when Aladdin turned 11, Aladdin was getting so intelligent at picking losers and winners that Larry began selling access to its data to other Wall Street firms. That same year, he took BlackRock public on the New York Stock Exchange. Straight after the IPO, the dot-com bust burst, pushing a wall of money from the stock market to bonds, which Aladdin had become the undisputed world champion in. Within years, BlackRock had become $1 trillion company, and as money started shifting back to shares, what did Larry do? He bought the asset management arm of Merrill Lynch, which was focused at shares. So to give for Aladdin's 18th birthday, all the data points for the entire stock market, and suddenly Aladdin had a new playground, analyzing every stock trade and risk factor for every company on the stock market. As a result, today BlackRock, together with his 2 closest rivals, Vanguard and State Street, both of which also rely on Aladdin's mountain of knowledge, have become the biggest shareholders of over 40% of all public listed companies in America. 2008, the global financial crisis hits, and before Aladdin turns 21 years old, is called on by every Wall Street bank and Timothy Geithner, the head of the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury. As soon as Lehman Brothers collapsed and the Wall Street meltdown began, the US government came calling to save the next collapsing bank, Bear Stearns. It was Aladdin who decided which assets to keep and which to leave in the $30 billion rescue package. And few people know it was a robot that saved America from disaster. With that first success, the Fed, US government, and now even European and Japanese central banks began relying on Aladdin to make the calls on where the $2.5 trillion of new money they printed should go. The majority of it, bonds and funding to prop up the mortgage companies and banks. But wait, aren't these exactly the assets that Aladdin and BlackRock already were invested in? Exactly. A growing protest of conflict of interest were drowned out by the noise of the printing presses printing more money, as the assets controlled by Aladdin rapidly grew to $11 trillion by 2013. In the last decade, Aladdin has gone from the leader to the dominator of all financial markets. With BlackRock's Barclays acquisition, it got iShares, Barclays Exchange Traded Funds Units, or ETFs. And with that, Aladdin moved from bonds and equities to dominator of ETFs, just as all the biggest investors shifted from mutual funds to ETFs. And that's when, in 2017, everything changed. On Aladdin's 29th birthday, Larry launched a top-secret project at BlackRock, codenamed Monarch. It led to the firing of his fund managers and replacing their funds with Aladdin's funds. The robot was now eliminating humans from the equation altogether. And as a result, today, over 70% of all trades on US stock markets are decided by robots, with Aladdin leading the way. These trades are completed from beginning to end without a human involved, in high-frequency trading far faster than a human can execute. Now, if this was just a story about a robot taking over the job of Wall Street traders, you might not be so concerned, unless you're one of those traders. But in the last 3 years, as Aladdin hit $20 trillion in assets, incredibly, it has begun to consume and control at an even faster rate. First, in 2020, as Aladdin turned 32 years old, the US government and Federal Reserve again came calling as the pandemic hit. Aladdin was again the one to guide the nation in what was now $4 trillion of newly printed money. Where did the money go this time? Inexplicably, for the first time, the Fed began buying ETFs in 2020. Well, that's a little strange. And again, the cries of conflict of interest were drowned out by the money printing. And then Aladdin revealed its endgame. Recently, BlackRock acquired eFront, which collects data on the things that you and I own, including private equity and real estate. And since then, Aladdin has consumed eFront's data on the entire global real estate market. And yep, you guess what happened next. Over the last 2 years, BlackRock and other funds using Aladdin's data have begun buying up single-family homes, where they can afford to outbid the rest of us as they have unlimited financing at hyper-low interest rates. The result is home prices rising by 20% over the last 2 years and pushing now even big players like Zillow out of the market. And here we see Aladdin's endgame, to be the one hyper-intelligent AI robot that not just controls Wall Street assets, but all assets, public and private. Now, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but even a skeptic with eyes wide open can see the signs. We're already at a point where no one can compete without Aladdin. As CEOs and asset managers like Anthony Malloy are now saying Aladdin is like oxygen. Without it, we wouldn't be able to function. And what about government regulation? Well, Joe Biden has appointed BlackRock executive Brian Deese as head of the National Economic Council, which basically means the oversight of Aladdin and BlackRock is now the responsibility of BlackRock. And Biden has also appointed BlackRock Chief of Staff Wally Adeyemo to be Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, which means BlackRock is now the Treasury as well as the Treasury Advisor. And this story is far from over. The genie is out of the bottle. And Aladdin has already reached a tipping point where one robot controls more wealth than any person or country. But as Aladdin's AI capabilities continue to grow, and with its rate of control rising by another $1 trillion to $2 trillion in new assets every year, it looks inevitable that Wall Street's secret weapon could end up owning everything, and we end up owning nothing. So what do you think? Are you indifferent, surprised, angry, afraid, or have a different point of view?
Wow. So
days for the start.
just a few things in that are so interesting of how this AI is controlling the mass majority of the world's finance. It's controlling the vast majority of financial interests. It controls Wall Street, and we've talked about in previous discussions how the love of money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah.
What happens when you give artificial intelligence a love of money? Jeremiah, what do you think?
That's a scary thought. I don't know. I think that they put it in the pocket too. They give it to the people that made them. It's a rigged game. It's a rigged game. That's all I gotta say. I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, people, they ask the question, who is it that's the quote unquote they? Who's the Illuminati? Who are the people at the top of the pyramid that are causing all of these things to happen in the world? Well, the answer is just trace the money. Find where the money's flowing from, and you
Follow
will
the money.
find a host of evil, right? And I wanted to discuss just briefly before we move off of the AI topic is a discussion regarding if AI can predict our moves based on pattern recognition, and they can control our lives by applying this information to the media we consume, to the things we see, to the agendas that are pushed on the population, then is this what will be a replacement of the Spirit of Truth or the Holy Spirit? Can we evade programming and conditioning of the beast system that is being pushed by these AI technology computers by basically doing the unexpected? Because whenever we follow our regular patterns, right, that we do day to day, and we have all our habits,
Yep.
then the government knows exactly how to influence us to make us do what they want.
Yep.
But whenever we're following a higher power, wherever we're trying to apply and follow the voice of God in our life, right, then it allows us to break out of the mold that the AI can control.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to toss this idea out to you and hear some of your thoughts, Jeremiah. Is I recently saw a video in the past couple months, and I couldn't find it. I looked and looked, but I couldn't find it. But it promoted the premise that the beast system, the Babylon that controls the world, and the Antichrist system, so to speak, that the Bible warns about, is actually intricately connected with the technological advancements that we're seeing with AI, with phones, with blockchain, and you know, just to give the analogy, for example, I already mentioned how Siri is like a replacement voice of truth in our life, right?
Yep.
Siri is now the voice of the beast, whether you call it Siri or if it's Bixby on Android or whatever. Siri being the voice of the beast. Cameras all over the place. We're carrying the eyes of the beast, so everything can be watched and recorded. The NSA is gathering tons of data. We're being monitored in mass, in bulk. And then, of course, the internet being like the brain of the beast, right? The neural system, the memories, as we upload our lives, as we upload videos to YouTube, as we upload our social profiles to Facebook, it gathers all this information in the brain of the beast to then be used to manipulate and control mankind, as we saw with, for example, the 2016 election and a lot of the agendas that were being pushed, as we see the censorship going out, kind of tailoring what it is you're allowed to believe and what you're not allowed to believe. The internet and the information therein is becoming the neural system of the beast as it pushes its agendas. And then finally, we have the recent development of blockchain technology. Isn't it? And no, I've dabbled in blockchain myself, so I'm not trying to be hypocritical, but is it not interesting, even in the term blockchain, it's kind of a reference to a type of imprisonment, because with a public ledger system, with blockchain, every single action you take can be tracked and traced in the public eye. And what does the public eye mean? Well, it means that AI will have access to that information to know exactly how you're spending your money. And so, man, it's just like all of these systems are working together for the benefit of the super number crunching AI computer systems that can then manipulate and feed out these protocols to the elite that can then apply protocols to mankind to reduce our population, to get us to follow certain agendas, to get us to give up on our morality, to buy into the morality of the beast system. Man, you know, how do you think the influence of technology on our lives is feeding AI, Jeremiah?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got a car, when I was 17 and Siri was a thing, and I remember driving in the car and it telling me to turn on the one-way road going the opposite way. So I relied on Siri to give me the wrong direction to do something not only illegal, but that could threaten my life. And then I was like, oh my God, Siri's the Antichrist. That was the first thing that popped into my mind. It's probably not true. It's probably, I don't know. But I'm just saying, up until now, that has what I've been telling people, that I really think it is. It has something to do with the Antichrist or the beast or whatever you want to call it. What do you think about that?
Exactly, man. That's exactly what I'm getting at, because while we've depended on Siri or Bixby to direct us with GPS directions, right?
Right.
Well, what if Siri starts to speak into our life in more other nefarious realms, such as, hey, just a reminder, go and get your hokey pokey. Hey, just a reminder, bow to the idol that's in Main Square.
They
hey,
kind of
just
already
a
are.
reminder.
It'll come up on suggestions like, where can I get my... Oh, I said it. Sorry, you might have to bleep
We'll
that
have
out.
to beep it.
Oh man, the hokey pokey.
We're working.
Yeah, we're still learning. If Siri told you to drive into a bridge, a lot of people would do it because they trust Siri. I always said that because I don't know directions very well, and I rely on, my iPhone to tell me where I'm going, even if it's somewhere where I've been 1,000 times. I try to find the quickest route. What if the quickest route is to the wall, and you hit the wall, like you're dead? So we shouldn't be relying on these things, and we should observe before we completely put all of our faith into anything besides God.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy, looking at just how much we trust in GPS voices, right? Well, there's research to show that parts of our brains are literally degrading because we're not figuring out directions on our own, that we're trusting only in the devices, right? Mm-hmm. And what if they start to apply the voice of Siri in more broad-reaching areas of your life, like what you eat, when you sleep, how you exercise, who you worship? Like I'm not trying to keep making the massive jump, but that's the slippery slope that is literally the frog in the boiling pot as the heat's being turned up.
Yep. And it's always good to keep your eye on the AI, right?
Oh, yeah.
To make sure that your truth and this truth, that it stays apart, right?
Yeah, especially considering that the people that are feeding information into AI are pushing nefarious agendas, whether it's population control, the abortion agenda, the LGBTQ agenda, whether it's gun control, whether it's go into the cities and depend on the food supply chain and don't farm your own food, whether it's all these variety of ways that they're trying to control mankind, we have to recognize that the people that are feeding the AI information to then influence us in our search results, influence us in the media that we have suggested to us, they have ulterior motives, whether it's based financial gain, just like we learned how AI is literally in charge of BlackRock, which is often credited with being like the people that control everything, right? Like influence the Federal Reserve, influence the stock market, influence everything. You know, trace the money and you will find the root of evil, right? Because the love of money is the root of all evil. So I had one more thing to share with you, Jeremiah, and we can move on to history segment.
All right.
I've referred several times to BB as being a great influence to some of the content that I share. And I just recently watched a fascinating interview on Jim Brewer, the comedian. He and Owen talk about population control and global governance, and use the metaphor of farming animals to help people understand how you are being controlled. And it was just so insightful. I wanted to share it with everybody because it was just so fascinating how the analogy was made, because really it is how they controlled the world population. And I just wanted to share this final video with you guys before we move on to our history segment.
All right, let's see it. I love Jim Brewer.
And there's not a whole lot of people like you. My agenda is to teach and wake people up. I'm not out here to be vicious and mean. I just want you to go, hey man, I'm just gonna put something in front of you. You kind of let me give you this a little now. I love what you do right here. Play the goat video. This is everything I talk about, but you use goats. And I went, everything you talk about from pornography on, I'm like, I love this guy. Oh my God, we'd be sitting around a fire for hours. We might, if I came out there, I think we might be around the fire for 7 straight days before we go, you know what, I got to get home. Tell your wife I'm sorry. I took up 1,800 hours. I got to go.
I love it.
Play this video. Yeah.
I'm in.
Play this video, Mike. I love it.
So this is
so
how
simple.
I strain the raw unpasteurized milk. So it's really clean to begin with, but big particulates, littler, and then you get that. All right, so this is, as you can see, it's already very clean, but you can never be too clean, especially when you're not pasteurizing. By the way, never pasteurize your milk. It just kills all the nutrients. There's no need at all. Raw is where all the real minerals and vitamins come from, and it's awesome for your immune system. So here's just under 2 gallons that one cow did in the morning, and then I'll be milking her again in the evening. And so now we write 2 on each of them because that lets me know this was March 2nd. There are all the ones from yesterday, and then that's all the skim over there. And so it's very important to know what day you milk each one. And then we get the cream off the top, make cheese, butter, all that good stuff. God, and then it goes into the skim side over here.
Come down, I'll
and
teach
then
you.
We do other stuff
coming.
with that.
I swear to God.
Okay, guys,
This
time
is
for
great.
a little lesson in population control and global governance.
Population control and
Outside
global
the store,
governance.
There's a bunch of goats who want to storm the castle. What do I do? Time for some pornography and corn syrup. So now when I open the door, and now I get to pick them off one by one. Hey, do you want a loan with that car? 2% financing.
Oh.
And you're stuck. Now I'm
Really?
behind you. And there's your wealth. You see how control works? Very simple. Student loans, interest on your student loans.
Oh my God.
I hope all the dining hall meal plans and My sexual experiences were worth it. Now, for the rest of your life. Interest on the student loans. Interest on the student loans. Hey, enjoying your Hollywood entertainment up there?
Oh, God.
Interest on your student loans. Interest on your student loans. You want a boat? You want a ski-doo? Hey, black ghost. It's the blonde ghosts that are taking your milk, not me. It's the blonde ghosts. Go get in there. Come on, justice. Go get some justice. Get some justice. Black ghosts matter. Black ghosts matter. Yeah, it's that blonde goat out there taking your milk. Now, why don't we get you a nice loan?
Oh.
Time for some justice.
Oh.
You know that it's the guard dogs that are the problem. Remember when you bit in the ankle? Black goats matter. Yeah. Just keep taking those loans. Black goats matter. Hey, Andy, that black goat that came before you got like twice as much grain over there. Yeah, didn't even pay for it either. It's only taking your grain. All right, let's get to work. Let's make America great again.
Oh,
Gary,
God.
you know why I rubber
Amen.
banded off your balls? So you'll never get a beard like the three amigos? And it's because we have enough goats, and I'm calling the population. Well, it's because you're brave and beautiful. And your new name is Caitlin. It's because you're the good guy, not because I'm trying to limit all your population. Black lives matter. Make America great again. Black lives matter. Make America great again.
Wow.
Hey, three amigos. You guys ready to pump? Gotta get rid of them guard dogs, huh? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was very illuminating.
Okay. That's another. Oh man, what a interesting, analogy of how mankind is literally milked for their resources in today's world. Right?
Yeah.
People are influenced by the pornography and the media and the TV, and they're put into these stockades so that the government can milk you of your resources while you're distracted.
Yeah.
And just like he started out, like all of the goats wanted to storm the door and get out, but the moment he distracted them, they were all just totally didn't care that the door was wide open.
Yep.
And oh man, what were your thoughts on that video there?
I thought it was so funny because it speaks to humans, and so it's just showing. I guess those are goats, but sheep. They just do what they're told, and they just so funny. I love Jim Brewer. He was a friend of my favorite comedian of all time, Norm Macdonald, who has a special on Netflix that you guys should check out. I've been meaning to say that since episode 1. He died like a couple months before my dad died, and I never cried about a celebrity until Norm died, because he was the most pure person that was in Hollywood, and he would expose stuff, and he was great. I just miss Norm. He made me laugh so hard.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I know Norm Macdonald was a big influence on BB on Owen as well, and I know that you're going to really enjoy our funny meme segment, because I actually have a quote from Mr. Norm Macdonald that you might find.
You did that for
funny,
me, didn't you? You did that for me.
Yeah, I knew you loved Norm. But anyways, that's all the current news I wanted to cover today. Hopefully, it was an encouragement for everyone. Like, again,
Absolutely.
We can't cover all of the current news, but we're going to give our best to speak truth and life into people and into a dark world. Hope to shine a light, right? So,
if anybody knows Jim Brewer, please have him reach out to the show, because we have an audience now, and he goes on podcasts, so we'd love to have him.
oh yeah, you should definitely give a shout out there, because once we start building these relationships, we could definitely do an interview with him, because I know he does interviews. So let's get on to the history segment, man. I'm super excited.
Well, thank you, Jake, for that, and for all the people that helped you find all that info. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. So let's get right into history. There we go. Today's history topic has to do with mental health and school shootings. On August 1st, 1966, at the University of Texas Clock Tower, Charles Whitman was one of the first documented school shooters. We have an exclusive guest on Skiba News Nation. He's actually our producer, my best friend, and my grandpa. He goes by Opa. But before we get into that, let's take you back in time to August 1st, 1966, and what you would have seen on the news.
Governor John Connally, a man who has also been felled by a sniper's bullet, said tonight in Rio de Janeiro that he is canceling the remainder of his South American trip due to today's tragedy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome our exclusive and special guest, my best friend, my grandpa, my producer, Opa. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
So, you were there August 1st, 1966, when all of this was happening.
That's right. I was attending a summer session right after I graduated from high school so I could get some of my freshman classes out of the way.
Can we pull up that picture of what you look like in 1966?
Well, I guess we can, sure.
Okay, so that's what you look like in 1966, and no, ladies and gentlemen, that is not Buddy Holly, that is Opa.
That's me with hair and teeth.
Good looking man.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, so you were at your summer classes, and what did y'all do when y'all started hearing the gunfire?
Well, we were in class, and I'm sure that there was popping sounds outside, but we weren't paying attention to that until somebody came running down the hall and yelling that there was somebody up on the tower shooting. And then a lot of us in the classroom kind of ran out into the hall, went down to the entrance, went outside to look up to see what was going on.
And y'all were underneath trees.
Yeah, there's some trees that are outside the English building, which is the first building right off the mall on the left side as you're facing the tower.
Okay, so let's pull up a diagram so we can show everybody exactly where you were from the sniper's perch. So on the yellow, you can see that's the classroom that Opa was in during the shooting, and then before the shooting, and then after is the green. He was standing right under there.
Yeah, we were standing between the building and the trees. We kind of thought that was a safe place to stand, but obviously, if we could see the tower and the shooting,
yeah, he could probably see y'all.
He could probably see us.
But y'all didn't think about that at the time.
No, we were teenagers, fresh out of high school. We thought we were invulnerable.
Yeah, but were you scared when the gunfire was happening?
No, not really. Like I said, we had this safe feeling as we were under the trees, and but we had some concern because we could see what was going on with the gunfire up from the tower, and then we could also see people on the mall. We could see some people cowering behind the flagpoles, hiding, trying to get out of the line of fire. We saw people lying on the mall itself. We didn't know whether they were alive or dead. And then later on, we saw people running out and either helping those people who were lying on the mall away to get into cover, or in one case we saw a guy dragging a person, which I assume the person was injured enough that they couldn't get up on their own.
Yeah.
And they drug them into a position of safety.
What did the school tell y'all about the incident, like after the event? Did they say it was some lunatic, or did they just not tell y'all anything?
Well, the school never came out with a response. What we learned was basically kind of what you saw on the news. That clip that you showed was a news broadcast that happened later that evening, and that's where we found out who it was and a little bit of information about him.
Yeah, I mean, there have been documentaries about this clock tower, and they've interviewed people that have didn't even see the puffs of smoke that were shown in that video clip, and you were actually witnessing it firsthand and got to see all this gruesome stuff and weird puffs of smoke, and I can't even imagine what that was like. But let's talk about the shooter a little bit. Let's play clip number 2.
Okay.
A little bit about Charles Whitman.
All right, here we go.
When he was 12, Charles J. Whitman became the youngest Eagle Scout in America. As an adult, living in Austin, the state capital of Texas, he led a scout troop at his local Catholic church.
He was loved by the Boy Scouts, and he took the boys out on a rifle range, and he showed them, and they enjoyed that.
Toby Hamilton was in Whitman's troop, but he didn't enjoy it. The scoutmaster often taunted the boys.
He would take a dollar bill out and he would throw it down on the floor and he'd say, anybody can do what I do can have the dollar. Well, $1 in 1966 is a lot of money to a kid. But he'd flip upside down and he would go into a handstand position with his feet up on the wall and he would do push-ups upside down. And of course, we'd all try to do it. We'd fall on our faces. And he would just laugh at us and snatch the dollar bill back and say, see, you can't do it, and walk away. I mean, he was just, it was all about showing off. It was about Charles Whitman. Nothing was about us. I don't know of anybody else in Austin that could shoot like he could. He'd taken us all out to a rifle range at one point, and his marksmanship skills were incredible.
There didn't seem to be any reason why he felt so angry, and yet the anger was really deep-seated from his childhood.
His father was a domineering presence in Charlie's life. Charles Whitman Sr. was strict and overbearing. He often beat his wife and his sons.
What's tragic about that relationship is that Charles Whitman Sr. apparently didn't see anything at all unusual about that. He was the kind of a person who could associate violence and love for a family all in the same sentence.
Charlie nursed a hatred for his father. His violence wasn't the only reason. Whitman Sr. constantly pressed and bullied Charlie to succeed. No matter how hard the boy tried, he could never please him, except when it came to his aptitude for guns. His father kept a gleaming collection of over 60 firearms at their home. By the age of 12, Charlie was an expert shot.
He'd been excellent with firearms from the time he was a small boy. His father said he could shoot the eye out of a squirrel at 50 yards.
When Charlie was 19, his relationship with his father reached breaking point.
He went out with some friends and he got drunk. And his father got enraged to the point where he beat up Charlie and threw him in the family swimming pool. He was so beaten up and drunk at the same time that he almost drowned.
He decided to sever ties with his father for good. With his mother's encouragement, he joined the United States Marines.
He was an outstanding Marine on his first tour. He was well-liked. People said if you had been somebody, you'd want to go up with Charles Whitman. His IQ was 138.
Seeing promise in Whitman, the Marines awarded him a scholarship in 1961 to study mechanical engineering at the University of Texas in Austin. There, he met a woman who would change his life, Kathy Leisner. After a 6-month courtship, they married. But their home life was short-lived. On October the 15th, 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis began. The confrontation between the Soviet Union and the US brought Whitman back to active duty. When he managed to return to university, he was no longer a good student, and the Marines withdrew his scholarship. They took Whitman out of the University of Texas and returned him once again to active duty.
He was not a good Marine anymore. He got into fights. He engaged in gambling. He got caught in the possession of an illegal weapon.
In December 1964, Whitman was discharged from the Marines. He returned to Austin, determined to redeem himself. He reapplied to the university, was accepted, and started a new course, architectural engineering. Charlie Whitman may have had a violent temper influenced by his father, but he managed to hide it from fellow students and most of his friends. However, his streak of aggression would soon reveal itself in the most brutal manner. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but below a calm exterior, an aggressive personality seethed.
He does seem to have been the type of person who did not have much resilience who was a rigid temperament, probably because his father was as well. And so he would have stored up that anger and the grievances he had so that it really didn't matter if he had friends and had family and whatnot. He still was an angry young man.
July the 31st, 1966 was the hottest day of the year in Austin. Charles Whitman sat at his typewriter in his sweltering home and wrote a letter that attempted to explain his feelings.
I don't quite know what compels me to write this letter. I don't really understand myself these days. I'm supposed to be an average, reasonable and intelligent young man. However, lately, I've been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts.
The 25-year-old was about to put those irrational thoughts to a deadly purpose. He dropped Kathy for her evening shift and went shopping, buying ammunition, weapons, cans of food, and bottles of water.
He planned meticulously, and he made a number of decisions that led to the largest mass murder in the history of America up until that time.
In the early evening, Whitman started typing.
I've been to a psychiatrist. I've been having violent impulses. I've had tremendous headaches.
As he typed, two friends dropped by.
When we walked in, there was a typewriter, and there was something in it, but of course we didn't stop to look at it or read it. And he was acting very normal.
The couple soon left. Despite exams being imminent, Charlie seemed strangely calm and low-key.
Usually before exams, Charlie was very into studying and didn't have time to do anything. And he was remarkably relaxed.
When he was alone again, Whitman continued to type.
It was after much thought that I decided to kill my wife Kathy tonight. I cannot rationally pinpoint any specific reason for doing this. I intend to kill her as painlessly as possible.
Whitman went to the home of his mother, Margaret. She had recently moved to Austin to escape her brutal husband. Whitman attacked her as soon as he entered her flat. He left a note near his mother's body addressed, "To whom it may concern."
I have just taken my mother's life. I am very upset over having done it. However, I feel that if there is a heaven, she is definitely there now.
He blamed the murder of his mother on his father's cruelty.
She took enough of his beatings, humiliation, degradation, and tribulations. I loved her with all my heart.
Returning home, Whitman crept into the bedroom and stabbed his sleeping wife. He returned to the typewriter and the letter he had been writing earlier. In blue ink, he scrawled 3 a.m., both dead. In that letter, Whitman said he had killed the two women to spare them from the murder spree he would soon launch.
We have mass murderers who kill their families and then say they wanted to spare them, but that's usually a lie. Usually that's just something they're telling themselves, but in fact, they're really very angry at these people.
The nature of the killings suggests rage. So these were both very violent, very close, very upfront personal deaths with someone that he professed to love a great deal.
Kathy said that when they were first married, that he would hit her. She told me that. He used to really have a temper.
Whitman had been taking amphetamines in the months leading up to the killings, making his frequent mood swings more volatile. In fact, Whitman had been exhibiting warning signs that he was about to crack for quite some time.
Often mass murderers are also abusing substances. The likelihood that they will act out is raised because their inhibitions are lowered and their impulsiveness is raised. So the fact that Whitman was taking dexedrine meant he probably wasn't sleeping well. He probably was irritated. Already being angry, that would have just magnified his sense of the need to pay back somebody or to get revenge.
At one point, Whitman even confessed his revenge fantasies in class.
Larry looked up and said, "Mr. Riley, Charlie's talking about taking a rifle and going up on the tower and shooting a bunch of people." And I just walked over and put my elbows on his table. I said, "Now that's just what an old Marine needs to do, to prove that he can shoot." And he never looked up. He had that little bitty smile on his face, and he just kept drawing.
Whitman saw a campus doctor about his anxieties and severe headaches. Once again, he spoke about the clock tower.
One of the things that Charlie indicated in the session was that he would like to go up to the top of the University of Texas with a deer rifle and kill people.
The doctor asked Whitman to return in a week, but he never did.
I have thought very much about the concept of death. When it overtakes me someday, I must remember to observe it closely.
At sunrise on August the 1st, 1966, Whitman packed enough food to last for 2 weeks. He also assembled earplugs, matches, rope, a transistor radio, binoculars, and gallons of water. There was a machete and 3 large hunting knives. He sawed off the stock and barrel of a brand new 12-gauge shotgun and packed it along with 3 rifles, 3 pistols, and 700 rounds of ammunition. He loaded everything into his car and then put on a repairman's overalls. At about 11 a.m., he drove to the University of Texas campus. As a student, he was waved through security.
So when did you learn that the shooter had like a brain tumor or PTSD, CTE, stuff like that?
I think it essentially was a news broadcast several days later where they announced the results of an autopsy and discovered that he did have a brain tumor.
And he was a Marine, so I mean, do you think if we had focused on mental health after this incident in 1966, things would be different today with all the school shootings? Like,
yeah, I think so. But if you, this last video you saw, it mentioned the fact that he went to a school doctor, not an outside doctor. And, you know, the school doctor sees a lot of kids, and he probably wasn't thoroughly trained in the aspects of what he was going through, what Charles Whitman's going through. So that's probably a reason why things fell through the cracks.
Yeah, I think I think all of our vets who come home from fighting for our freedom should be treated like heroes, as they truly are. They're truly heroes that fight for our freedom, and the fact that they didn't give him medical attention like the government didn't, it seems like a kind of an issue with me.
Yeah, it is an issue. We you know, something might have happened to him while he was on active duty. That seemed to be when he came back from active duty and went to the university the first time.
He seemed normal.
He was, yeah, but his grades weren't, you know, good enough, and so they took the scholarship away and went back to active duty again. And so when he went out and went back to school, he did much better. But then I assume that as this tumor grew, it was putting pressure on his brain and causing his headaches and causing him to basically go crazy. And somebody should have picked that up. Obviously, the school doctor should have notified authorities right away rather than saying, come back next week. And the fact that he was taking medications trying to
self-medicate,
that was not helping him at all.
I mean, Whitman gave so many signs to teachers and therapists and everybody, and it just almost looked like it fell upon deaf ears. Like nobody listened to him. And
right.
There's a problem today with you know, vets when they come home, they don't have a place to go. I mean, sometimes they're homeless, sometimes, you know, they're not. I mean, it's a real problem, and I feel like the government needs to treat them as the heroes that they are. And I know if we focused more on the mental health thing, that would be, you know, that would resolve a lot of issues with these. Like, we watch Marvel movies and we love all the heroes, but we have real heroes in this country that go and they fight. They are Captain America. They
Right.
are those people in real life, so they should be treated as such. And I know when Trump was president, he signed something called the Veteran Treatment Coordination Act. I'm reading it down here. And it was made to help veterans who struggle with PTSD, mental health, and even brain injuries, and a lot of other things too. But after that, when Biden came into office, not only did he leave troops in Afghanistan, but he cared more about illegal immigrants than it seemed that he cared about, you know, the people that fought for this country. And that was when I was speechless when all of that was going down. And we need our government to help these people, to help our heroes.
Yeah, the Veterans Administration and their hospitals are overwhelmed with all of the patients that come in, and they need help. They need more people to help take the massive amount of soldiers that come through the VA, and they need funds to have the right kind of people and pay the right kind of doctors. Essentially, I don't think we're paying the right amount of attention to the VA hospitals and getting the care that the returning military people really need.
Yeah. And I just want to say to every veteran that's watching this show, thank you for fighting and risking your life for mine, and thank you for fighting for my freedom.
Yes, I agree 100%.
And that's all I got right now. Thank you so much for everything.
Okay.
I'm done with history. Thank you for being here, Opa, and I'm glad we got to talk about some of this history.
Oh.
And let's go back and start with memes.
Okay.
So what'd you think of that?
Wow, it's just so fascinating that somebody we know personally was at one of those terrible historic events, witnessing it, like right there on the street. Opa was literally there. That is just mind-blowing. Wow, what?
And the crazy thing is,
about all that?
He saw JFK right before he was assassinated too, and it was like a couple years before that. That's why I put that JFK connection. I don't know if you noticed it in the video.
I did.
But yeah, he saw him right down the road. They let out school, and he was able to see him in the motorcade, which is cool. So he's seen a lot of cool stuff throughout history, and he witnessed one of the first documented school shootings ever. So I thought that would be cool to talk about and connect it with today. And
the main takeaway I took from the video is that there are people dealing with medical issues, strange thoughts and stuff throughout history that have committed these atrocities. And it often seems to me like they're either listening to some kind of evil voice in their head, or there's some type of demonic influence that is telling them, hey, you should go shoot people from a tower. And it's terrible that they give into it, but it just makes me think of how much people in the modern world today who are going to psychiatrists, that are taking pharmaceutical drugs, are all the more susceptible to mind control or being convinced by spiritual entities or CIA, MK Ultra programs to go and do these crazy things. Man, just a very, very shocking story. And that was one of the first big shootings, wasn't it?
yeah, 1966. They have it. I looked it up the other day. There's a museum called Alcatraz East that has the big gun that he was using. Because if you looked at the first video that we were watching, the old news program, you can see the puffs of smoke, and that was from the shooter. And then you could see like little ricochet, and people were actually trying to shoot him down from the ground, and
Wow.
It was ricocheting off. And Opa said that there were helicopters, and they were trying to shoot him. We didn't talk about that in this, I don't think, did we? Do you want to come on, Mike?
Yeah, no, we didn't. The first video we talked about it, but not this one.
Well, do you want to tell everybody what you experienced with that?
Yeah, what we saw was news helicopters flying around. We saw private planes like little Piper Cubs, and we saw people from all over driving their trucks and cars and pulling out deer rifles and handguns and shotguns, and they would go to the tower and they'd be shooting. And from a Piper Cub, somebody was trying to shoot. So it was craziness. Everything was crazy.
It makes me want to ask you, Opa, is in today's push for gun control in the inner cities, like places like Chicago and places like Canada, it's now illegal for people to have those weapons that they were shooting to try to take out the shooter with. How much worse do you think this situation would have been if nobody had access to firearms to then try to take this guy out? How many more people do you think he would have taken out?
I don't know. I can't say. The thing was, in 1966, we could carry guns everywhere. We had them in our trucks. I mean, Austin back then was more rural than it is today. So there were a lot of people that did hunting and you know, like to go to the gun range and stuff like that. So there were more guns prevalent then than there are now. And of course, the thing that got me was just the madness of the people trying to fire a shotgun from the ground to hit the top of the tower, thinking that they were going to kill the Charles Whitman, or the people flying the Piper Cub trying to shoot out of the Piper Cub trying to hit Whitman. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Now, as far as would it have made a difference today if we would have allowed less gun control today to protect the school shootings and things like that? Maybe. I think maybe we should supply guns to people who are in a position to be able to protect the people in the school, perhaps the teachers, perhaps security people within the schools or things like that.
He witnessed them wheel the body out too, and people were trying to get to it, and they were blocking him off. A lot of weird, crazy stuff, just all the way back in 1966, and it just goes to show you that, you know, not much has changed. And if we would focus.
Yeah, you know, the thing is too that the what he was mentioning is when they brought the body down, there were people gathered around the tower, and these people were so crazy. They wanted to get that body and they wanted to rip it to shreds, even though the guy was dead. And everybody just went wild because of the fact that this is their first time that they've ever encountered somebody shooting a lot of people, and not just at the campus. I mean, he was shooting people in a barber shop. A guy was getting a haircut, and he could see him through the window, and he hit him. And he could hit people real far away because he had some rifles that had long range capability and a good sight, and of course he was an expert marksman.
Just thinking about this story is so fascinating, and how you were there witnessing it, and a lot of people are just terrified for these things to happen today. So it really makes me think how important it is for people to be able to protect themselves, and also you guys shared a lot about veterans and help that is needed for these people that put their minds and bodies through enormous trauma going overseas and fighting wars, and I know many veterans in the truther community, looking back at their time served, not only was it trauma just going over there and fighting, but it becomes mental anguish and trauma to look back and think that we weren't always fighting wars for the headline news reason. People were sent over for other special interests, such as for pharmaceutical things. For example, I have family members and people that I'm close with that were veterans in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and they would clear poppy fields 1 mile off of the roads as people were driving to and fro, but they would leave poppy fields that were beyond 1 mile off of the road because it was hard to see them. And so whenever media would come, they would say, oh, look, everybody's doing a good job. They're taking all the drugs out. But there was actually a system that was very corrupt in the Middle East. And a lot of soldiers recognized that they were over there kind of fighting against the wind. And it's such a traumatizing thing to think that you're fighting a war for not necessarily the hoorah patriotic reasons you signed up for, but fighting for special interests or for oil control or for pharmaceutical operations to preserve the poppy fields over there that have been being sold to the CIA. And this is stuff that I know Rob talked about in several of his things. I mean, Rob, your dad also was a veteran, served in the military. Yeah. I have family members, and looking back, it's like, man, the people that come back from those wars in the Middle East, from those wars throughout the years, and then they learn about the true intentions behind those wars, how much more mental anguish and disenfranchisement do they have that would cause these mental breakdowns, that would cause a lot of the feelings of abandonment, knowing that they were taken advantage of and used for the perpetuation of oil banker wars. And then they get back to the States and they're not even cared for or provided for in any, like, hardly at all. I have another family member that just to get his body treated, that had gone through the battering of years in the military, and it just had completely collapsed and degraded under him to where it's hard to even walk. Going to the veteran hospitals, they go from the premise that if you can't prove that you are suffering from these ailments from the military, then they're just going to push you off. And that is so sad, because so many things like Agent Orange that came about during the Vietnam Wars, and the things that made men sterile, that caused cancer, the chemical agents that people handled, they come back with all these medical issues. They come out messed up in the head, and then they're just abandoned. And no wonder that there's a mental breakdown in a lot of these veterans, and it's so tragic. And I know that the Trump administration was one of the best for Veterans Affairs, as you were mentioning, Jeremiah, which is, really was surprising to see, because all of the administrations previous, even like under Bush and under these other guys, they just totally abandoned veterans.
Yep. And it's so sad, because they really are our Captain Americas. They're truly heroes. And it took in my opinion, the greatest president, Donald Trump, who never ever was a politician, to get so many things right. And then what happens? They win the election, and then all those things that were signed into law are now worthless to the I don't even want to call him President Brandon. You know what I mean? The Brandon administration. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the topic of patriotism and the call of men to go to war is always something that we need to look at very carefully. For example, what's going on in Ukraine right now, the war drums are drumming, man. And we have also, like, Top Gun Top Gun 2 was released, kind of spurring on that feeling of patriotism, calling men to sign up to join the army or join the military. But then when you look at the powers that are moving the pieces, the question is patriotism serving the corporate entity of the United States, all caps, or is patriotism defending our homes, defending our communities, defending our way of life based on the Constitution? And a lot of veterans are coming to realize that the preservation of our families, the preservation of our communities and our ways of life here in the West do not have to be intricately tied to United States, the corporation, and her interests, you know?
Yep.
And so it's just like, what a mind game that people who serve in the military today have to deal with. And there's two groups of people that are so beholden to modern mandates, and it is the military and the medical industry.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are staying in the military, a lot of the true patriots who just love America and want to keep the true, good, beautiful alive and well, and they're not there just because they want to shoot people.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are being weeded out by a lot of these mandates that are contradiction to the constitutional rights. And a lot of these people that are having to fold to their convictions just so they can participate in the military complex, they are all the more beholden to the agendas that are being pushed in recent years. So there have been hundreds and hundreds of generals and captains and high-ranking officers that were being weeded out during the Obama administration. A lot of them felt that there was a reprieve during the Trump administration because finally somebody was putting America first, right?
Yep.
But then as soon as Biden comes in, a lot of the same agendas are being used to weed out the people that would truly stand up to protect the United States Constitution and the principles that this nation was founded on. And it's just such a mind game now because, you know, people today that are signing up for the military, you really got to ask yourself, what agenda are you going to be serving in the coming years? For example, if Biden starts drumming the war drums for us to go to war in Ukraine, is that a war that is actually
worth fighting?
Worth fighting, exactly, man. Is it worth fighting for the industrial complex of United States, all caps, and her banking, monetary, worldwide financial interests, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is what truly worth fighting for the Constitution of the United States, which was founded upon biblical principles, and what's worth fighting for is our rights as individuals to stop tyranny, including, according to the Constitution, that which comes from governance, right? Tyranny from the government also, and standing up and defending our homes, our culture, our families from a lot of the things that come along with the World Economic Forum and the new world order, and the things that we heard even Bush Sr. talking about that they were wanting to bring, which was world dominance in order to bring everyone under a new world order. Because a lot of these wars throughout the past years have happened in nations that aren't going along with the banking system routine. That, you know, there's like Gaddafi was trying to produce a currency that was outside of the world banking industry, and he was taken out. And so there are many examples throughout the past 20, 30 years of how our military system really has been the military arm of the New World Order. And the soldiers that fight are good-hearted people that are just trying to do right. And they're just trying to kind of live up to the expectations that our movies and our TVs
and they're
have
being taken
convinced
advantage
us.
of. They're being so taken
Exactly.
advantage of. It's so wrong. And like, I love the Constitution. I love the Second Amendment. I love carrying my gun on me at all times. You know, that's my right. And Texas is cool because we have the constitutional carry. And I wish all states would do that, but they're probably not. You need to come move to Texas, man.
Yeah, we actually had a good law here in Kentucky before recently we had a Democratic governor elected, but we had a constitutional carry law here in that it was actually you don't have to have license. Yep,
Yeah,
you didn't have to have a license to constitutional carry. So there are good.
So it's very similar to
refuges
ours.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah, man. Well, after all that dark stuff, I think it's you ready for some memes?
Oh yeah, you're gonna love some of the ones I got
All right.
this week.
And before we start, if you have any questions for Opa regarding the 1966 Charles Whitman shooting, leave a comment below and I'll get the answer from him and I'll reply. So let's meme me up. All right.
Awesome. All right, here's our first meme of the day. It's good old Drake looking at his phone, and it says, "Me trying to figure out what's going on in the world via memes since I refuse to watch the news." So, I thought this was hilarious since we use a lot of memes to kind of get across our opinions and talk about current events. So it really hit home to kind of what we do here on Skiba News Nation.
Yeah, that's great. That's so funny.
All right. We have a very funny meme from Norm Macdonald, as I preluded to earlier. And this is what Norm Macdonald says about Pride Month, since we're still here in the 6th month of the year, which Obama declared was Pride Month. He says, "A real shame to see what's happened to Pride Month. How it's been taken over by these big corporations. Makes me harken back to more innocent times when the family would gather round to celebrate. No gifts, no fancy marketing campaigns, just simple joys of sodomy and AIDS." Oh man,
that's great.
Norm Macdonald, what a like a insightful comedian. I know why you love him so much, man. He just told it like it is, you know?
He's very much like Andy Kaufman. Like he didn't want you to know if he was messing with you or not. But he was a truth teller. He would tell the truth regardless if it hurt somebody's feelings or not, which is how, America used to be. It used to be before, all the PC culture and the cancel culture, and he was canceled and just kind of ignored it and it went away. He's a comics comic, they call him. So he didn't care if the audience got it or not. He just did it. And, through some dark times in my life, I've watched Norm and have laughed so hard. And I feel like that's important. If they cancel comedy, they're canceling that joy of laughing, in my opinion. And, that last special, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. It's right before he died. He recorded it in his house on his computer, kind of like this setup, but looking at his computer. And it was just like, I cried because I was like, man, he knew that it was the end, and he didn't tell anybody. He didn't tell his family, friends, nobody knew. And then he just was gone. And I had wrote him a letter a couple months before, and he sent me back something, and then my mom texted me saying, "Hey, Norm Macdonald died." And I was like, oh my God. But he was a believer. And that's pretty cool to have a mainstream comedian as a believer. So I know I'll be seeing him again. He's making everybody up there laugh. So
yeah, I think it's tied to a love for the truth, and when you recognize that in other people, that they have the spirit of truth, which in the Bible is called the Holy Spirit, right?
Yep.
That guys like they might tell crude jokes every once in a while. They might be more honest than makes you comfortable, but there's a role for all these different types of people, and I think that's so amazing that he had faith and that he had a belief in Christ and God, and he was a Christian, as well as being able to interact with all these mainstream celebrities and stuff, and the way that he kind of kept people from putting up the shield of no, stop preaching at me, is because he used truth as his comedy, and it allowed him to speak into people's lives and point out like funny little things like that meme I just read. Here's another meme.
Let's
It's
see.
regarding projection and externalization, and this is what we have happening in our culture today. And it says up here, "I'm not okay until you also wear a mask." Right? That's what happened here in 2020. And then we have in 2021, "I'm not okay until you also take the hokey pokey." Right? And now this month we have, "I'm not okay until you also endorse my behavior." And just like Norm Macdonald was talking about, he's like, man, I look back to the days before all this pride stuff was corporatized, before Walmart and Netflix and Disney and all these people were painting rainbow flags everywhere, celebrating sodomy, right?
Yep.
Well, let's just look back fondly on the days where it was just about, your freaky sex life and it's like
he
oh,
makes
man,
fun
just
of this Pride Month thing way before, I mean, anybody at home wanting to get a good laugh, just type in Norm Macdonald and you'll find endless amounts of funny jokes about pride, about whatever. And he hit it right on the head. It was so great. We miss him.
That's another reason I think you'd love to watch some of the Owen Benjamin's podcasts, because BB's one of his biggest influences as a comedian is Norm Macdonald, and he and Norm actually had a relationship. So there's a lot of the similar characteristics of just blatant, just honesty, some of that content as well, and why I like to use some of BB's memes in our show here is because he does have that very strong influence from Norm Macdonald. I know you love Norm, and man, it's just comedy. The best comedy is truth, right? Because you're telling something that people are so scared to speak that when you feel free to just let it fly, that it relieves tension, right? And here's our final meme for today.
Name me up.
Speak to me, Lord. Somebody praying, and then out of the cloud, he hands him a Bible, right? I've talked about this with some friends recently. Is so oftentimes people are want to hear the voice of God in their life. They want to know what their purpose is. What is my role here? And we don't realize that if we start with the things that He's given us already, that the whole world can clear up. All the confusion, all the misunderstanding, all the agendas can have a light shed on them if we just open the Bible and start reading and start to apply it to our life. And what we find in today's world is people start to say what God is and is not, and what God wants and what He doesn't want, but they've not even taken the time to look into
the book,
the Word, and to find out.
All the answers are there.
And that's where we need to start. And
Yep.
that's what, Rob always encouraged people throughout his whole ministry and all his things he produced, is that, guys, let's just take the book literally. And I know he changed so many people's lives. And if anything I could, just bring up that he influenced me in, and what I hope to share with you, Jeremiah, is that, guys, all of the things that we are confused about, all of the things we wonder about in our purpose and our destiny as individuals, we can unpack from the Word. Because the wisest man who ever lived, right, King Solomon, who had all the women and all the gold and all the beautiful things and all the stuff, right? He lived into old age. He had a lot of failures and shortcomings, but in the end, it says that he summed up the whole purpose of life. And it's not what is talked about in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like what the big robot with the big head said the meaning of life was, the number 42. And they're like, what the heck's 42 mean? And it's like, well, you didn't give me a good question, so that's the answer without your question. But the question that we need to be asking is, what does the Most High want from us? And then the answer that the wisest man who ever lived gave was to fear God and to keep His commandments. And that's what Rob was preaching to the day he died, man. And I think that's what I want to reiterate for Skiba News Nation audience. And that was the last little funny meme I wanted to show. It's like, Lord, speak to me. And he's like, boom. It's simple. Just open it.
It's right there.
It's right here. It's right here. So, all right. That's all the funny memes I have for today.
Well, man, it's been a great show. Oh. Well, man, it's been a great show. I enjoyed those memes. I love the current news. I hope you enjoyed the history.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we continue to grow. I mean, we've grown so significantly. I'm blown away. Like every day I'm blown away by how many people are subscribing and sharing our content. And I think we're being monitored, if I'm being honest, because I keep turning that spigot off.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the audience what's happening?
I got to, man. Guys, look, if you could only see the background analytics of our videos, every episode gets most of its views in the first 24 hours. The first Skiba News Nation episode in like less than 14 hours got 13,000 views and then went sideways. And even at one point had 2,000 views removed, and then, you know, it kept going sideways. The episode 2 jumped to 23,000 views in the first 12 hours and then went completely sideways. I wonder why. Episode 3 blew up even more viral in the first 24 hours, man. Mind-blowing numbers, right? 70,000 views, and then hit a wall in the first 12 hours and went completely sideways. So there's definitely an audience out there that this content is reaching. We really hope it's a benefit to you guys. But hey, the only way we can get around the algorithm
that first day
the YouTube scene is to share it out and get this in front of as many people as you can, because we're trying to do good. We're trying to get to the truth. We're trying to share our thoughts on the world and shed a light on the darkness, right? And so
absolutely,
let's break the algorithm, guys.
Let's do it, man. And if they're gonna kick us off, let's go out with a bang, right?
Oh yeah. Let's get as much information out there as we can, and maybe let's give a shout out to our other alternative platforms that people can find Skiba News Nation.
Well, they can find us on Rumble now. I set up a Rumble where it's connected. You might still need to help me with a little bit of the technical stuff, but what do you want me to give them? Instagram?
Facebook? I think Facebook. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We'll try to get BitChute as well. BitChute
Twitter
setup is a good alternative.
We're on Twitter and Truth Social, which is Trump's Twitter. It's actually a little bit better than Twitter because you can say whatever you want. Trying to think of all the other platforms. Just any platform. If you wanna search Skiba News Nation, that should be the username or the @Skiba News Nation. So you should be able to find us that way. Okay, so if you want to submit a story, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. And also, me and Jake are thinking about doing a future segment where you write us a letter and we reply, and that address is Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560271, The Colony, Texas 75056, and we'd love to hear from you. And if it's a private message, please just write private at the top if you don't want it read on the show, and we'll keep that private. But we'd love to hear from you, good, bad, whatever. We'll read it. It's all about truth. Well, man, Jake, yeah. I could not do this show without you, and I appreciate you being here. You are the best co-host I could ever ask for. And anything else you'd like to say to everybody?
Just thank you, Jeremiah, for letting me be a part of this, and I'm so happy to get to be on here talking about news and scriptures and about Rob with you. I think it's going to benefit so many people because Rob, your dad, had a big influence on my life, and I know you're super interested in just unpacking all of his lifelong work. And I think we're really going to help a lot of people. And I'm just so happy that you asked me to be along the journey with you. And on my side, just a quick shout out to the people that have helped me. Shout out to some people I've stolen memes from. Thank you, Annie and Mrs. Griffin. And also shout out to BB for the gravy. Some of the videos and memes I learned over the years from watching that podcast. So those are my shout outs. And just once again, Jeremiah, it's great to be a part of Skiba News Nation.
All right, man. Well, I'd like to thank those people too. And thank you for watching Skiba News Nation episode 4. We'll see you in 5, right? Hey everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Skiba News Nation. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want, you can even get Skiba News Nation gear. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Skiba News Nation. Stay tuned.